I stood frozen in my driveway at 1:47 a.m., the gravel crunching under my boots as a stranger dragged a couch through my front door. My front door. The door I'd locked myself before boarding a transport plane halfway across the world. The porch light was on. That detail stuck with me. I always turned it off when I left. A little girl ran past the window, laughing, her socks sliding on the hardwood floor my father refinished with his own hands. Someone else carried in a lamp. I smelled fast food, French fries, and cheap cardboard boxes, a life settling into a space that didn't belong to it. Then the woman stepped outside. She wore a fitted blazer even at this hour, phone in one hand, keys in the other, confidence wrapped around her shoulders like armor. She took one look at me, dusty boots, deployment duffel slung over my shoulder, and smiled the way people do when they think they hold all the cards. "You can't be here," she said calmly. "This property was abandoned." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just asked one question. "Who told you that?" She pointed past me, toward the quiet street, toward the symbol I'd underestimated. "The HOA leased it to us. Everything's legal." I pulled my phone out, hit record, and nodded slowly. Because in that moment, standing in my childhood driveway watching strangers live my life, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. She thought she'd won a paperwork game. She didn't understand she'd just declared war on a platoon that knew how to take things back without losing control. Let me tell you how it got here. That house wasn't impressive. No gate, no columns. Just a single-story place sitting on land my grandfather bought when this town was still mostly dirt roads and pickup trucks. He built the first version of it himself after Korea, and my father expanded it after Vietnam, hammer by hammer, paycheck by paycheck. That house had sweat in the walls. It had mistakes in the corners and pride in every repair. When my dad passed, I didn't sell it. Everyone told me to. I could have cashed out, bought something clean and modern closer to base. But you don't sell a house that carries 3 generations of your family. You protect it. So when the neighborhood added a homeowners association years later, I didn't fight it. I read the bylaws, paid the dues, followed the rules. I mowed the lawn before deployment, repainted the trim, even replaced the mailbox because the HOA sent a polite notice asking everyone to upgrade for uniformity. At first, it was fine. Quiet emails, monthly newsletters, community barbecue announcements. Then I deployed. Somewhere between my 3rd and 4th month, overseas, the HOA emails started sounding different, less friendly, more formal. Fines instead of reminders, warnings instead of requests. Grass too tall. Paint faded. Unauthorized vehicle reported when my elderly neighbor parked in my driveway to water the plants. Each notice came with a fine. Each fine came with a deadline. Each deadline existed in a time zone 8 hours behind incoming fire and operational briefings. I replied when I could, explained, provided documentation, mentioned I was deployed, quoted protections I had under federal law. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. The HOA president changed everything. She'd been elected while I was gone. I never met her in person until much later, but her emails had a tone that made my jaw tighten through grainy satellite internet. She never said anything outright hostile. She didn't need to. Every message read like she was teaching a child how responsibility worked. Military service does not exempt homeowners from community standards. Extended absence does not remove maintenance obligations. Failure to comply will result in administrative action. Administrative action. That phrase followed me into dreams. I set up automatic payments for utilities and dues, asked my neighbor to check on the house, thought I'd stabilize the situation. Then the fines exploded. Not 1 or 2. Dozens. Compounding daily. Landscaping. Paint. Aesthetic deterioration. Each violation treated as an emergency. Each emergency justified another charge. By the time I realized what was happening, the total was already more money than I had saved in my life. I contacted military legal support from halfway around the world. They sent letters. The HOA acknowledged them, then kept going anyway. That's when the house went quiet. No more emails, no more notices, no more fines. I thought they'd backed off. They hadn't. They were setting the stage. The call came from my neighbor first. Her voice shook. "There are people moving into your house," she said. "They have papers. The HOA president is here with them." I tried to call back. The connection dropped. I called the police from overseas. They told me the same thing they'd tell anyone. If there's a lease, it's a civil matter. A civil matter. There are words that don't mean much until they ruin your life. By the time emergency leave was approved, everything was done. Lease signed, money collected, authority claimed, which brings me back to my driveway at 1:47 a.m. I didn't confront the tenants. That would have been pointless. They were as confused as I was angry. They believed what they were told. I left, slept in my truck, watched my house from across the street until sunrise. I took pictures, videos, license plates. Then I called the people who know how to handle a situation without losing their heads. My platoon. Nobody asked questions beyond what time zone I was in and whether I was safe. Word spread faster than any official channel. By the next afternoon, I had confirmations, leave requests approved. Flights booked, not to fight, to document, to stand. To make sure no one ever confused discipline for weakness again. I walked into the HOA office 2 days later, still calm, still polite. I asked for copies of authorization documents, rental approvals, board votes. What I got were smiles and delays. Everything was done properly. You'll need to submit a written request. You should have handled this before you left. That was the moment I understood the rules had only ever applied one direction. So I stopped reacting and started planning. Because when professionals take something from you illegally, you don't shout. You let them prove it themselves. And they always do. The first thing my platoon did wasn't show up. That surprised people when they heard the story later. They expected trucks, uniforms, confrontation. They imagined force meant volume. Force doesn't start loud. It starts organized. Before a single boot hit the ground, I had spreadsheets open on a borrowed laptop in my truck. Every HOA email, every fine, every timestamp, every contradiction, patterns. Jump out when you stop reacting and start studying. The HOA president liked paperwork, but she didn't respect it. Documents were vague, authority cited itself, emergency actions approved retroactively. The lease agreement listed the HOA as an acting agent, but didn't reference a board vote, a court order, or anything signed by me. She counted on one thing, no one checking closely. By the third day back, my platoon started arriving quietly. One by one, rental cars, civilian clothes, no dramatics, no reunions in front of the house. We met at a diner off the highway at 0600 like we'd done countless times before missions. Same energy, just less camouflage. Everyone had a role, not assigned, understood. That's what happens when you trust the people next to you. One handled documentation, cataloging, damaged property, and HOA actions. Another focused on communications, emails, recorded calls, written requests. One guy worked logistics, tracking dates and payments. Another coordinated neighbors, getting statements without stirring panic. No one talked about confrontation. We talked about leverage. Meanwhile, the HOA president got comfortable. She started parking her car openly in front of my house, brought contractors by, made changes without permission. None of it major, things that felt small enough to slip under the radar. That's how people behave when they believe there will never be consequences. I requested another meeting. She agreed. Too quickly. Her confidence was impressive, honestly. When someone thinks they've already won, they stop being careful. She greeted me with sympathy theater, folded hands, practiced concern. Look, this has gotten emotional for you, she said. But we're just trying to maintain property values. Property values. The phrase that excuses everything. I asked point blank where the rent money was going. That's internal account. I asked who voted to lease my house. The board supported the decision. I asked to see the vote record. She smiled and slid a form across the table. Submit a request. So I did. In writing, in person, recorded. Then I waited. What she didn't realize was that every delay benefited me. Because delays mean documentation. Documentation builds timelines. Timelines expose lies. Neighbors started talking, quietly at first, then louder. Turns out I wasn't the only one fined aggressively while away. I wasn't the only one threatened with administrative remedies. I was just the first one who came home. The tenants noticed things were off too. Promises about repairs that never happened. HOA instructions that contradicted themselves. Rent requests routed through personal accounts instead of escrow. They asked questions. Questions were discouraged. That's when the HOA president overplayed her hand. She sent them a notice explaining that if they discussed their lease with anyone, they could be in violation of community cooperation standards. Community cooperation standards, not a real thing. But intimidation works when people don't know better. So we educated them. Calmly, respectfully, off record. They didn't move out. We didn't want them displaced. They were collateral in someone else's plan, which made what came next unavoidable. The HOA scheduled a special community meeting, mandatory attendance, encouraged. That's always the moment a bully wants to perform. They chose a weekday evening. Projector, microphone, folding chairs, agenda titled Addressing Ongoing Property Concerns. My property. The president stood at the front like a prosecutor. Calm voice, slides ready. She explained how some homeowners abandon responsibilities, how temporary absences create risk, how leadership must act decisively. She showed photos, carefully select. Ed. Cropped. No timestamps. Then she made a mistake. She claimed authority she didn't legally possess, out loud. On record. I watched my platoon exchange looks without turning their heads. Silent communication. Years of training meant nobody reacted. When questions opened, I raised my hand. Just one. Can you show the board authorization for the lease? She deflected. That type of detail isn't necessary for the community. I followed up. Was there a vote? She answered too quickly. Yes. Is it recorded? Pause. Yes. Where? Silence stretched. That's when murmurs started, not shouts. Those come later. First comes discomfort. A neighbor spoke up, then another. Fines questioned, fees compared, stories aligned. The president's tone shifted, less warm, more firm. The meeting ended abruptly. After that, things escalated fast. She sent legal threats, claimed defamation, claimed harassment, claimed interference. We stayed quiet, filed requests, sent notices, logged everything. And then she tried something reckless. She ordered contractors to secure the house while the tenants were still inside. No notice, no justification, changed locks, restricted access. That crossed lines even she should have known better than to cross. The tenants called me first. I told them not to leave, not to argue, just to document. Police arrived. It stayed civil. Officers hesitated. It was messy. HOA claimed authority. No one wanted responsibility. That hesitation worked in our favor, because confusion reveals cracks. Within 48 hours, a local reporter called me. Someone had tipped them anonymously. They asked questions. I answered carefully. Facts only. No accusations, no emotion. That's when the spotlight turned on. The HOA president panicked. She called me directly for the first time. Her voice was louder now. Sharper. This has gone too far. She said. You don't understand what you're risking. I recorded. I just want my home back, I replied. You're damaging the community. Was there a vote? I asked calmly. She hung up. That night, my platoon finished what we'd come for. Not confrontation, preparation. We had evidence, timelines, witnesses, authorities notified, media interest growing. And one more thing. The bylaws she'd been hiding behind. They were older than her tenure, sloppily written, poorly enforced, and missing something critical. Authority over private property without owner consent. She'd built her entire strategy on intimidation and assumption. Now the assumptions were gone. Next move was hers. And desperate people make predictable mistakes. The mistake came on a Friday. They always do. People get tired by Friday. Lawyers forward things instead of reading them. Leaders rush decisions because they want problems gone before the weekend. The HOA president was no different. At exactly 4:18 p.m., she sent an email to the tenants and copied half the community by accident. In it, she stated that the HOA was temporarily assuming possession of the property pending resolution, and that rent would continue to be collected under existing authority. She attached a document. It wasn't a court order. It wasn't even close. It was an unsigned memo with the HOA letterhead and her name typed at the bottom. No signature, no judge, no case number, just confidence pretending to be power. We printed it, every copy. That email did more damage than anything else she'd done. Because now she hadn't just acted. She'd admitted it. Over the weekend, something shifted in the neighborhood. People stopped waving at her. Cars slowed down when passing my house. Curtains moved differently. Authority only works while people believe in it. By Monday morning, the tenants had received a SEC. On notice, this one demanding full cooperation or further action. They forwarded it to me without comment. I forwarded it to legal counsel. And then we waited. At 9:03 a.m. Wednesday, a letter arrived at the HOA office. Not from me. From a law firm she recognized. It wasn't dramatic. No bold threats. Just clear language. Cease and desist. Immediate restoration of access. Full disclosure of board actions. Preservation of all records. Failure to comply would result in actions she didn't want explained in public. The response was silence. But silence isn't peace. It's breathing before panic. That afternoon, HOA trucks showed up again. This time not to lock anything, but to retrieve things. Documents, hard drives, storage boxes. Neighbors watched from their porches as files were moved hurriedly, as if someone was trying to clean a room before company arrived. Except the company was already on the way. A second reporter called. Then a third, different outlets, same questions. Did the HOA really rent out a deployed soldier's home? I stuck to the same answer. They acted without my consent. No insults, no speculation. Facts are heavier when you let them sit. By Thursday, the HOA president's energy changed completely. Emails grew formal. Apologies crept in without admitting wrongdoing. Meetings were postponed. A special board session was under review. Then something happened that none of us expected. One of the board members resigned. Then another. Turns out when people realize their names might be attached to something indefensible, they suddenly remember limits. I requested entry to my home, in writing, formally. No response. So I showed up. Not with a crowd, not with cameras. Just me, my keys, and 2 officers present as observers, not enforcers. The lock wasn't at mine. That mattered. The officers documented it. Inside, the house smell. Ed wrong, not dirty. Just unfamiliar. Furniture out of place. Wall hangings removed. The tenants kept it clean, but it wasn't mine anymore. Which is exactly what the HOA had turned it into, a revenue stream. I took pictures. Didn't touch anything that wasn't documented. Then I left, because the last thing you do when someone's digging their own hole is give them a ladder. Friday afternoon, the HOA president finally requested a meeting. She wasn't smiling this time. She brought counsel. I brought patience. Her lawyer talked a lot, used words like misunderstanding and procedural ambiguity. I let him finish. Then I asked one question. Who authorized the lease? He turned to her. She hesitated. That hesitation did more damage than any argument. The meeting ended with promises to review the situation. Review. Meanwhile, the tenants were done, not angry, just exhausted. They gave notice, not because we pushed them, but because no one wants to live inside someone else's legal disaster. The HOA tried to delay the move-out. That stopped immediately. On Monday morning, a different letter arrived. This one from a judge. Emergency injunction. Temporary restoration of possession pending full hearing. That's legal language for stop pretending. The HOA was ordered to cease all actions related to the property. Rent collections frozen. Locks removed. Records preserved. The tenants were compensated from funds that didn't come from me. My house came home before I did. The community meeting that followed was packed. Different energy this time. No presentation. No slides. Just explanations. The HOA president spoke briefly, apologized vaguely, took no questions. Then she stepped down, permanent. The board was dissolved for interim administration. An audit was announced. By the time the dust settled, the story wasn't about me anymore. It was AB. Out how thin authority really is when it's built on intimidation instead of consent. I moved back into my house slowly, fixed things properly, repainted with colors my dad would have liked, replaced what was damaged, thanked neighbors who watched over it when I couldn't. My platoon left the same way they arrived, quietly, no victory lap. We didn't take anything by force. We let pressure do the work. There was one last letter from the former HOA president. Short, defensive, addressed to my attorney. She claimed she'd acted in the best interest of the community, and that she'd been unfairly targeted. No apology. I framed it, not out of anger, as a reminder, because authority without accountability will always try again somewhere else, unless someone stops it. People think the story ends when you get your house back. It doesn't. That's when the silence starts. For a while after the injunction, nothing happened publicly. No announcements, no statements. The HOA website quietly went offline. The former president stopped answering messages entirely. Neighbors exchanged looks instead of gossip. Everyone waited for the other shoe to drop, because when something like that collapses, it rarely does so cleanly. The audit took longer than anyone expected, months. During that time, interim management uncovered things that had nothing to do with me, but everything to do with motive. Funds rerouted through temporary holding accounts, selective enforcement, fines that never made it into official ledgers, rental approvals issued without documentation. It had been happening slowly, quietly for years. I just happened to be deployed when it escalated. The board members who resigned early avoided most of the fallout. Distance has a way of softening consequences. But the former president didn't have that luxury. Her name appeared everywhere once records were suppo. Inade, meetings she chaired, messages she sent, decisions she signed, authority leaves fingerprints. The civil cases moved forward without spectacle, no courtroom drama, no viral clips, just process. Right where she'd assumed it would never reach, settlements followed. Some homeowners got money back, others got liens removed. Policies were rewritten, the HOA was restructured with strict limitations and outside oversight. The thing that surprised people most? The check I received wasn't the biggest. I didn't want it to be, because money wasn't what was taken, control was. The house felt different when everything settled, not damaged, restored, like something that had held its breath too long and finally exhaled. I fixed the things that mattered and left the scars that told the truth. The doorframe scratch from moving furniture stayed. The wall where a photo used to hang stayed blank. Reminders that possession isn't just about keys, it's about consent. Neighbors stopped by more often after that. Some apologized quietly for believing notices instead of people. Others thanked me for standing when they hadn't felt able to. I told them the same thing every time. Anyone could have been next. That's the part people miss. This wasn't about me being special. It was about timing. I left. She assumed absence meant weakness. She assumed no one would come back prepared. Those assumptions cost her everything she'd built around control. Months later, I ran into her once. Not at a meeting, not in court, at a grocery store. She didn't recognize me at first. Her certainty was gone. The posture had changed, shoulders slightly forward, eyes scanning. When recognition finally hit, she froze. I nodded. Nothing else. No words spoken. She turned away. That was it. People expect revenge to be loud. Most of the time it's quiet. The platoon still jokes about it now and then. Not about taking the house back, but about how predictable it all was. The intimidation, the paperwork games. The moment confidence tipped into recklessness. Systems fail the same way in every environment. People confuse authority with immunity. They think rules are weapons instead of boundaries. They forget that discipline doesn't vanish just because uniforms come off. The title of this story makes it sound dramatic, took it back by force, but the truth is simpler and more unsettling if you're the kind of person who abuses power. We didn't break anything. We didn't raise voices. We didn't need to. We just stood longer than she expected. And systems built on intimidation collapse when someone stands still long enough for everyone else to see the cracks. The house is quiet again now. Porch light off, door locked. Exactly how I left it, except this time I know something I didn't before. Ownership isn't proven by paperwork alone. It's proven by what you're willing to defend calmly, patiently, and all the way to the end. And if this story reaches someone who's being pushed the same way, told to comply, to stay quiet, to accept wrongdoing because it's official, then it did what it needed to do, because authority without accountability is temporary, and every system forgets that eventually meets someone who reminds it, quietly, completely.